Hello everyone, it's Mike Levin. Friday morning, October 2nd, 2015. Out walking. I guess he's a little bit shy today, the big guy. And so starts the crappy wet weather season of my videos. I remember a bunch of my best where I was really hashing out the details of Pipulate were happening with snow on the ground, snow falling, my hands freezing off, me questioning the wisdom of selfie walking videos, and then producing some of my best. I rewatched the Secret Untold History of Commodore, and wow, I make some good videos. Anyway, this morning I am thinking through how I am going to be most effective in this most critical next phase of Pipulate development, which is final completion and introduction to public. It's a tricky twofold equation because I have to get it in use quickly, and there are still a few rough edges for me to file down on it. They're not major, but things like offering an initialize spreadsheet option on the Pipulate drop-down menu when Pipulate detects that the spreadsheet that is available to it, a save has occurred. Most likely it's been given a name, most likely Pipulate. All the communication is fine, but it's never been used for Pipulating before, so it has no tabs like the config tab and the scrapers tab. So you can always open a Pipulate discussion with going, okay, so this sheet has never been used for Pipulate before. You can tell because it doesn't have those tabs, so let's initialize the sheet. Bam, icebreaker. Really totally easy to understand. You can always tell a Pipulate sheet, even if it's not named Pipulate, even if you've renamed it by that time, which is perfectly legit because you can Pipulate from any spreadsheet in Google Spreadsheet because it works using the document key that's provided to the bookmarklet on click. Now, if a document key is not in the URL field, when the bookmarklet is clicked, it assumes you're targeting a document named Pipulate, capital P. It's a reasonable assumption. People might zero in on this as a weakness of the system, that I don't auto-create a file. Well, I might end up auto-creating a file if a file named Pipulate just that way doesn't exist. But I won't allow it to create just any old new spreadsheet based on, say, the URL and username, which is what I did the last time I programmed a system like this. And the result was crazy file propagation. I mean, so many new files, and a lot of it is cruft. You're never going to look at it or care about it again, so why? Why not make some attempts to collapse down your spreadsheet mashup experimental activity into a single spreadsheet with a common name? If you do something cool, rename it, protects it. Next time you try and run Pipulate without a Pipulate file target, it'll tell you, and you'll have to create a new one. As soon as the API that I'm using called gspread supports the creation of new files, which it very well can do because gdata itself, the underlying API it connects to, does support it because I did it before. It's just a wee bit complicated, and people have actually done it as patches to gspread or as alternate forks or alternate branches. They forked it and created alternate branches that have this code into it, but I don't think it has been merged back in for whatever issues. But eventually I'm going to be able to create new files from Pipulate, which will be nice, but it's just not necessary the way I'm designing it. So you got to get people over these few initial conceptual hurdles. You can Pipulate from any spreadsheet if you start with that sheet displaying. But if you start with another site displaying and you want to run Pipulate functions against that URL, you better have a file there named Pipulate in your Google Spreadsheets. capital P, lowercase IPULATE. And once you do that and you go through the login, or you grab the bookmarklet, you slide it to your menu bar. Is it your menu bar? You slide it to your favorites, your bookmark bar. There's a few different names for it, but you know what I'm talking about. When you want to make a quick shortcut in your browser, you pick up the URL or the little icon next to it and you drag copy it into your bookmarks bar if it's displaying. If not, Control-Shift-B will usually get it to display. A little different on Mac. I think it's Control flower key or Option B, but same difference. Now you'll be able to click that bookmarklet no matter what page is displaying in your browser. And it will immediately open a new tab that presets the selected URL parameter. I think you would see U equals on the parameter string, or on the query string of the URL. But because no document key is there, you know it automatically will be targeting a sheet called Pipulate. And once you go there, if you don't see excuse me, if you don't see tabs at the bottom with words like config and scrapers, it needs to be initialized. Pipulate itself knows that too, and so it has conditionally shown you an initialize sheet option. And it's totally redundant, extra, but it works in the flow of the conversation well. If the sheet isn't initialized, it will automatically be initialized the first time you try and replace question marks. But they're two separate concepts that get lumped together that work perfectly well together in workflow, but not so much in explaining the process to people. So I got to first initialize spreadsheet, show people what that does, get the tabs populated, and then second, fill in a few values, a few question marks, and show them what it is to do the replace question marks. And yeah, that's the first phase of my work this morning, and it's a pretty easy one. That should probably take me a half hour or so. But after I do that, that leads into the next, leads into the next, leads into the next, until I get my entire hit parade for today, which is, it's not really the hit parade. Hit parades are the ones that everyone asks for, and everyone knows the systems moves forward when it's done. But these are my small critical grinding off the sharp edges. Other ones include that while you're pipulating, it feels like you should be able to change the menu, the drop-down menu, and unlock the Pipulate button so that you can interrupt it or whatever, or restart it, which is totally valid. Flask will do that. Flask is made to gracefully handle that behavior. They know it's the same connection from the same person, and so the framework, Flask, and the Python web server all know, stop serving the prior request. Just stop. So if it's a big Pipulate tab that ran out of control, you change a drop-down menu, you hit it again, and it'll just pick up where it left off. Pretty nice. Speaking of Pipulate just being able to pick up where it left off until it finishes the job that it knows is there, I can have Pipulate call itself, a tail call or whatever it is. I don't even know if that's the official programming terminology for it. But you can very easily make a task call itself so that it knows that some condition must be met before it stops. And it's just simply a while statement. You know, this is while is not smiled upon in programming circles because it creates an infinite loop. It'll just run forever until the job is done. Guess what? That sometimes is the case with Pipulate, because in the world of flaky APIs, where something just might not work the first time, no fault of your own, And even your back off retry algorithms have come up empty just because there's an outage on that service for 5 minutes or whatever. You want to try again later, but after some sort of long sleep loop. So you put a wait at the end. You know, it's the same as any old retry scheme, but instead of giving it a number, you put a really long wait time, you know, maybe 10 minutes or whatever, at the end of it. So it'll keep retrying 10 minutes, 6 times an hour, no big deal. If you want to be more conservative, you make it retry 20 minutes or 30 minutes. 30 minutes would be twice an hour, not an unreasonable banging on anyone's API, even gdata. And it would be polite, and you could leave it running. And so you could have something that can't run at the same time as itself. I can kind of look for that and prevent it in the same technique I use for the start-stop daemon, the Linux start-stop daemon, kind of part of the Ubuntu flavor of Linux, but still it's pretty nice for getting daemons running, which is basically just taking a bash script, a script that you write, a Unix script, that could call a Python script, and throw it into a scheduled location where the operating system just knows to look and check and run it, because the operating system itself is running something like a daemon to do that. And so this is where timed operations come into play. But because they're running without a user interface silently in the background, you don't like them to run twice, so they check to see if itself is running already. And if it finds itself running, it has its options. It can just not try. It can fail to start on its next scheduled cycle because it sees it's already running. And I'm drawn towards that approach. It's a good approach. Or if it thinks for some reason something critically went wrong with a prior task, it can kill that task. It's got the PID, and it knows its own PID, so it knows not to kill itself if it was addressing the task by name, but we're addressing it by ID, so it knows it's been 30 minutes since the last try. So kill off that last task and then just run itself again from scratch. It's the same thing as a human retrying again later after forcibly stopping it. And it sometimes works. It's a good way to do it. And that is my plan for making, infusing reliability, perceived reliability, because there's going to be a lot of retries going on, into a playing space where flaky APIs are just a reality and you got to deal with it. And instead of doing a sort of dippy thing of blaming a tool that's bold enough to put itself out in front of you and say, I'm doing things in APIs real time and there's going to be problems, you can just gracefully deal with it, hide, and make totally invisible to the user all the scheduled stuff. And when it's not on the scheduled stuff, good morning. And when you're actually looking at it through like the web user interface that most people think of as Pipulate when they think of Pipulate, it'll keep you entertained and it'll be exactly explicit about what it's trying to do. If it's in while statements, I'll come up with the right verbiage so it doesn't sound so techy. And the long retry phases, like every 10 minutes. And so that people can run a job really aggressively till it's done, either from the web interface or the scheduling thing or some third thing that I have in mind, which is triggering it as from the command line. So anyway, if I get to that work today, I will consider this a massively successful day, and that gives me the bulletproofing that I need to sort of roll this thing out to the world without fear. Thanks for joining me. Hope to talk to you again soon, and don't forget to subscribe.